Hello and a warm welcome to India's World, your one-stop show which gets you a threadbare analysis of the top stories playing out internationally for India. I'm Neelu Vyas. This week's episode focuses on the latest India-Pakistan diplomatic row. The bitter, sour relations between the two nations seem to have hit a new low after diplomats of each of the countries have accused of harassment. The latest standoff being that Pakistan has decided to pull out of the WTO ministerial meeting of the Commerce Ministries, which is to be held on March 19th and 20th. Where are we heading as far as the Indo-Pakistan relations are concerned? And do we really see a ray of hope or some kind of a thaw in the relations? Joining me now are some of the credible voices. Parthasarathy, former High Commissioner to Pakistan. TCA Raghavan, former High Commissioner to Pakistan again. And also joining us is Akhilesh Suman, a Foreign Affairs Editor on Rajya Sabha TV. And also joining us on the phone line from Karachi is Sarwar Naqvi. He's a former diplomat. I welcome all of you, sir, on the program. And before I go to my other panelists, I would like to begin from you, Akhilesh. I believe that there is some kind of a rejoinder from the Ministry of External Affairs saying that they do not want to deal with this issue through the media. So can you just elaborate on what the MEA has said?
Yeah, actually, before I go to what MEA has said, yesterday only our High Commissioner in Pakistan has again given a note verbal to Foreign Ministry of Pakistan, and he has given 5 points that yes, our website in Pakistan is inaccessible now. That nobody, neither the High Commissioner's office nor the Pakistani people.
India's website,
which is gov.in, it is inaccessible now.
Okay.
So that is a big problem.
Okay.
Again, the Consular of India in Pakistan, he is being chased on 16th of March. He was chased, and then our second secretary, he went to Jinnah market, that is a very famous market in Islamabad, I think, and he was also being chased and threatened. In the midst of night, one second secretary doorbell was pushed, and some people threatened him and asked for money.
Okay.
So this is the latest provocation that India has launched to Pakistan, and before that, you know that our High Commissioner in Pakistan is not being given access to the Islamabad club. That is one of the major clubs where you can interact, because in Pakistan there are not so many places where you can interact with people, interact with fellow diplomats of other country. So the clearance have been it has been cleared by Islamabad club, but the Interior Ministry of Pakistan has hold.
Right. But as what Akhilesh is pointing out, I'll come to you, Mr. Parthasarathy, ringing a bell in the middle of the night, which many are saying it's like a ding-dong diplomacy which they're following. Then you have people stalking the families, stopping them in the middle of the road, chasing for a membership, an entry to the membership in a club. Is harassment the new normal of diplomacy between India and Pakistan?
Well, I'd put it this way, harassment is not a new normal.
Okay.
It's an old normal.
Okay.
I've lived through 5.5 years. I think Raghavan's lived over 7 in Pakistan, both of us in 2 tenures, except I did one in Karachi also. The fact is this continues. One problem I wish to mention, which we have had as diplomats. In India, the intelligence agencies function under the order of a civilian government and take orders from the civilian government.
Yes.
In Pakistan, that's not the case. In one particular instance, when my staff was attacked, I got a call from a friend in the Prime Minister's Nawaz's office saying, cool it, it's, it won't happen again. But when it did happen again, there was retribution from our side.
Okay.
So yes, it is unfortunate. It should not be allowed to happen. I think at least we played this out of the realms of publicity, and you let the diplomats sort it out. But right now, I fear with Pakistan headed for elections, with the army having its own preferences, and Nawaz Sharif is not one of them, there is going to be this sort of tension.
So you are indicating that Pakistan in a way is playing to the gallery because of elections?
No, as I said, it is a split personality as an administration.
Okay.
I know my friends in the Foreign Office and even in the PM's office then, they did not particularly favor this. But then I think even my friends from Pakistan admit that these are issues beyond the civilian administration. It is the military.
Okay.
So the military is, and now They have their own interests in the coming elections in Pakistan. So we'll have to see how we play it out. But in the meantime, I think what you have said is good. Avoid publicity. If you are taking retribution, do it quietly.
Okay.
There's no need to sit on a rooftop and talk about it.
Right.
And then go about getting diplomats to function in a normal manner.
But as what you said, that allow the diplomats to function normally. But Mr. Raghavan, my question to you is that what India says that it is routine, something which is routine, which is almost normal for the envoys to go back to their country, hold consultations with their government. Would you really see it under a framework of something which is very normal?
Well, it's not the entire India-Pakistan situation in all its dimensions just now is not entirely normal, because you have intense shelling on the LOC, you have absence of any communications, not just between governments, but also people-to-people level communications, media ties. There's a general level of tension. So I don't think the situation is entirely normal. But this kind of situation where it concerns diplomats has happened before in the past too.
Okay.
And normally the effort of both governments, and in particular both the foreign offices, has been to try to ring fence diplomats away from the larger turmoil in India-Pakistan politics, because both countries have felt that you need diplomats in place and you need them, like Mr. Parthasarathy said, to be able to function effectively. Now, why has this immediate issue arisen? Will have various reasons, and there may be different interpretations which are given. But I think the key is to try to restore the situation as it existed before the recent incidents
But restoration of this issue, of course, will lead to a question that in whose court does the ball lie? So let me go across to Mr. Ali Sarwar Naqvi, who's joining us from Karachi. Mr. Naqvi, whom do you really blame for the current standoff which is seen, a diplomatic row which is ensuing between India and Pakistan? Whom do you really blame the situation for?
With regard to this question, let me first make 2 or 3 points. In the first place, I agree with your panelist that this is not a new normal, it's an old normal.
Okay.
And it's an old normal that goes back many, many years. I can tell you that I traveled to Delhi for some conferences in the 80s and in the 90s. And every time I came out of the residence of the ambassador, I was staying with him, there would be 2 cars following me, one in front of me and one behind me.
Okay.
And even when I went to Chandni Chowk or Connaught Circle or whatever, there would be cars following me, keeping a tab on me. And this kind of thing goes on between our 2 countries all the time.
Okay.
There are occasional sort of hotting up of this issue by harassment of diplomats, and just as your other panelists mentioned some harassments in Islamabad, there have been reports of harassment of Pakistani diplomats in Delhi. So unfortunately, both the countries, and I don't think that this is right to bring in the military in this. It's I think largely the intelligence agencies or some covert personnel of the Interior Ministry who are involved.
But now, Mr. Naqvi, I don't want to get into a political discussion whether military or the civilian government is on the same page. But the reality is that it does have ramifications on the diplomatic relations between India and Pakistan. Would you not concede?
Your question is who is right or who is wrong is not something that one can say with any definitive way. Now, the point is that our relations are governed by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, which requires both countries to ensure that the diplomatic agents are allowed to function freely and without let or hindrance their work of representation. Now, we both have to be more mindful of our obligations both the countries. Of course, the problem that we are talking about emanates from the overall atmosphere of bilateral relations. And the bilateral relations at the moment are not very good. That is due to a whole variety of reasons. We can't spend time talking about that.
I want to ask from Mr. Naqvi
just hold your thoughts, Mr. Naqvi. Mr. Akhilesh, Suman has a question for you. Yes, go ahead.
Ambassador, if this is going on for a long time between India and Pakistan, it is not a very new thing. But then why it is happening that your High Commissioner is being called in Islamabad and then reports are coming that he will not come back? So what is the situation according to you in Islamabad now? Whether he is coming back or whether he will stay there?
Yeah. All right. The High Commissioner, the government often calls the High Commissioner for consultations. Now, it is perhaps due to the problem of harassment at the moment, but sometimes the consultations, the representative is called back for other matters, for other political matters or commercial matters or economic matters. So, number one. Number two, the reports, you see, I will go back to what was said about the media. Now, the media not only highlights these things and raises them to a high pitch, but also spins the stories. I mean, there is no reason why the High Commissioner will be kept back.
Mr. Naqvi, just hold your thoughts. Mr. Naqvi, just hold your thoughts. I will come back to you. Mr. Parthasarathy, this whole process of how the envoys have been sent back to their countries and we are a kind of having a very reserved and a reticent kind of an approach, whether to call it a recall, whether they go back to their country for further consultations and a window is open for them to come back. How do you really state the position at the moment? Because officially, of course, the stand is not very clear.
Look, I go along with what Mr. Naqvi has said about it's fairly routine to call back a High Commissioner for consultations, so that is right. But I'm afraid I don't agree with him on one little thing. And this is I'm talking on personal experience. When my staff was attacked by Sikh Jathas on one occasion, when the Sikh Jathas were there, I got a call. It was just after the Lahore summit. I got a call from a friend in the Prime Minister's office saying, "Please, we are taking care to see this sort of thing doesn't happen." It happened again when Nawaz was away in the US with the Clinton talks to end Kargil. And at that time, it was very clear to us that it was the military. Civilian authority was not there. Foreign Office knew nothing about it. And therefore, I think it's not just us. You talk to the Americans, you talk to anyone. The security establishment in the military is answerable only to the military. Even the Prime Minister or the Supreme Court does not call them.
Right.
Yes, the PM and the others talk, but the military is a third equal establishment of the state. In countries you have the judiciary and the executive. In Pakistan it's judiciary, the executive and the military. And that's why we have to be careful in this. We do a constant process of studying the civil-military relationship. I can mention that when Rahil Sharif was there, things were more difficult. With General Bajwa, things have generally, been easier to deal with. So, to no foreign government, whether it is India or the US or even the Iranians or the Afghans, and even the Iranians have told me this, dealing with the military as a separate establishment, a member of the establishment is necessary. After all, every foreign visitor who comes calls on the Chief of Army Staff. But there are only 2 countries where the Chief of Army Staff exceeds or equals the cabinet ministers in status. But Pakistan and Myanmar. And both there, the common custom is to deal with. So I think you'll have to recognize these realities of state power in dealing with Pakistan. You can't ignore it.
But Mr. Parthasarathy, when you talk about these realities that military also is established entity and we really have to walk a thin line between the civil government and the military. My question to you, Mr. Raghavan, is that how do you really see a way out? Because of course when military is so active and both the civil government and the military obviously are not on the same page, which has a diplomatic ramification, do you really see a way out, how relations will thaw out? Because each time the situations escalate and we again try to de-escalate, then again it goes back to the same. How many times will we go back to the drawing board and again start from the scratch?
Well, I don't know how many times we'll go back, but every time we go back, we have to be realistic. And being realistic means that beginning from the point that Pakistan is your neighbor and you have to deal with whoever is in the government over there.
Right.
So you have dealt with the military in the past when they have been in charge. You have dealt with civilian governments when they are in charge or appear to be in charge. The present situation regarding diplomats and how they are treated cannot be related exactly and directly to the form of which civil-military equations have presently taken in Pakistan, because in the end both countries realize that at a minimum you need diplomats in place in both capitals and you need them to be able to function with some minimum stability and minimum effectiveness.
Right.
Now, to remedy this situation, we will not be able to remedy this situation by beginning with civil-military equation in Pakistan. We have to remedy this situation by taking recourse to the Vienna Convention or by other agreements which have been reached between
But
India and
the irony
Pakistan.
is that both nations do concede to the fact that there is a conduct of the Vienna Convention which they need to follow, but both are violating
But
it.
I think it's a positive that both agree.
Okay.
And which means that really it is a matter which the foreign offices have to settle.
Okay.
We cannot settle it by looking at larger issues of should there be a dialogue, should the military, should we have a dialogue with the military or with the civilians, or they will be judging who should we talk to, and so on. No, I think if our aim is to have diplomats in place, we have to address that limited question much more directly.
But currently, don't you think that the message is much larger, that both sides calling back their envoys and, you know, the families returning to their nations, it does send out a message that they don't want a further strengthening of the diplomatic relations? Would you correct me on this?
Well, I would say that the present situation with regard to treatment of diplomats reflects the overall poor state of the bilateral political relationship.
Okay.
And there are many other indications that this is a symptom. This is not the main driver.
Okay.
But we can address the symptom without the main driver being changed.
Okay. Akhilesh, you have traveled to Pakistan a number of times and you're dealing with the Pakistani officials here in Delhi. Do you really see some kind of an improvement in the way you interact with the ambassadors in Pakistan as well as here? Do you really see some kind of a change, or the situation has really worsened for the media also?
Yeah, obviously I didn't go to Pakistan the way these two ambassadors have gone. But yes, I have gone there and I have seen that there had been a good way of communicating between Pakistani High Commission and Indian journalists, Indian High Commission and Pakistani journalists.
Okay.
But I think this communication has also broken down.
Okay.
After this,
so now you say that they are not accessible at all.
No one is accessible.
Okay.
This incident has really broken down, and now you
on
see
both sides.
Almost. Ceasefire violations are increasing from both the sides. India says that ceasefire violation comes from there, and now we have to respond it. All sources in the government is telling that situations are going beyond our imagination as far as diplomatic mistreatment is concerned. So our people are also responding. Pakistanis are also saying the same thing, that you are misbehaving with our diplomat, so we are responding. So you know that situation is escalating by every day. It is a spiral that it is becoming difficult though when to stop. India will tell that they should stop first to misbehave with our diplomats, then there is nothing wrong. Ceasefire violations are being tackled by our armies or paramilitary forces.
Mr. Naqvi is still on the line. Mr. Naqvi, what we have seen, if you talk about the reciprocal retribution, we have always seen that Pakistan is the nation which initiates the things to worsen a little, and then India starts reciprocating. So can the nation of Pakistan not behave a little responsibly and say that, look, we will not make the first move so that we don't try and escalate situations to this kind of a situation what we are witnessing right now?
There is a very simple solution.
Okay.
And that has been proposed by Pakistan at the DGMO level.
Okay.
And that is that we should have joint investigation of any incident. The LOC issue is really a very worrisome issue, because constantly there are fires and our civilian population is often hit people are killed and their property is damaged. And we, you read the Pakistani press, I don't know what the reality is, but the Pakistani press says that it is Indian provocation.
But Mr. Naqvi, if you say that the Pakistani soldiers are being killed, Mr. Naqvi, if you say, Mr. Naqvi, allow me to just complete my question. If you say that Pakistani soldiers are being killed, it's also the Indian soldiers who are being killed. So the nation cannot sit quietly and just take everything very peacefully that, okay, you continue to kill my soldiers. Can the situation be like that?
Is we should investigate together and find out what's really the cause of each such incident. Now, that's one. As regards diplomatic contact and diplomatic interaction that we need to have, I think we again have to deal with this problem without, as I agree with what was said, that without recourse to an overall analysis of what the bilateral relations are like, because this we have always had. We have, in some ways, the positive is that we have had diplomatic relations even during wars that we have had, unfortunately. So we must maintain our diplomatic interaction, and for this there has to be effort on both sides. There's been much talk of the military. Now, as if India doesn't have a military. Every country has the military.
No, India does have a military. India does have a military, but India's military is also on the same page of the civilian government.
Well, ours are too. I mean, you have built up a story of Pakistan dominated by the military, controlled by the military, and this is not a fair assessment. And unless you have a fair assessment of the other country, you cannot deal with that country properly.
But Mr. Naqvi, as long as you have a tit-for-tat kind of a relation between India and Pakistan, do you really see the situation going anywhere?
Well, I worry about it, and I think we both have an interest in improving the situation and not letting it go out of hand. And Pakistan needs to be seen as as a country which is independent and self-respecting, and Pakistan has its own institutions and its own system. I think Mr. Raghavan knows. He was here. I knew him then, and Mr. Parthasarathy some years ago. So I deal with the Indian High Commissioner. I meet him socially here and there. Mr. J.P. Singh, the deputy, is also somebody I know quite well. So, we have to have a level of sobriety and seriousness, and we cannot allow, all kinds of noises. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one important point.
Yes, sir.
The High Commissioner has been called for consultation. He has not been recalled. There is a difference between the two terms.
Right.
Called for consultations and recall. He has not been recalled. I don't think, I am not in the Foreign Office anymore, but I don't think that he has been recalled.
Right.
And that is a wrong impression that is being circulated.
Okay, Mr. Naqvi. Okay, we'll just come back to you. Mr. Parthasarathy, Mr. Naqvi is talking about a level of sobriety which the two sides need to maintain. But in the present context, do you really see that happening? It's almost like lesser said than better.
No, as I said, foreign offices will always try to keep lines of communication open.
Okay.
That's what we are there for. After all, in the middle of Kargil, I was there and I met with everybody, and my counterpart Ashraf met with everybody here. So that is a line of communication you have to end. Where I would request my friend Mr. Naqvi not to misunderstand. Yes, every country has an army, but as my American friend told me, the problem is that in Pakistan, the army has a country.
Okay.
It's a separate organization of state. It respects neither the elected government, and the Supreme Court is too scared to touch them.
Okay.
That is the reality of power.
Okay.
Now, I'm not passing judgment on that. I've served in a country in Myanmar where that happens. But you'll have to find a way. It's all easy to say a joint inspection, but the reality is
the feasibility doesn't work out.
How can you have a joint inspection with a guy who's giving covering fire to infiltrators?
Absolutely.
So I think the fact of the matter is, let us be very clear. Real peace prevailed when General Musharraf on January 4, 2004 signed an agreement with Mr. Vajpayee in which he agreed that territory under Pakistan's control will not be used for terrorism against India. And please believe me, that agreement was kept, and we progressed on a lot of fields between 2004-2007.
Right.
So we are not doing this for fun and games, because yes, we need to improve. I feel very bad that we reached a stage where Sufi pilgrims can't come
Right.
here.
Absolutely.
And therefore, that has to be remedied. But we should be very clear and realistic. As I said, I hope they get a strong government after the elections.
Right.
And we'll take it from there. And the DGMO should talk, the NSA should talk.
Okay.
And Sufi pilgrims should come.
Okay. So as Mr. Parthasarathy is saying, that official lines of communication, of course, will remain open, but talking particularly about this current standoff, the diplomatic row you're talking about, there is a certain trust deficit, government websites being closed to the two sides, families coming back, envoys not interacting at all. So do these people really go back to the drawing board? They wait for the elections in Pakistan to get over? How soon do you really see things normalizing?
Well, I don't know. Nobody can predict what will happen in India-Pakistan relations. But my feeling is the present situation with regard to diplomats can be remedied quite quickly by the foreign officers concerned.
Okay.
It is an issue which in the past also, as I said, has been ring-fenced from the larger India-Pakistan bilateral turmoil. And at this juncture also, it can be addressed quite quickly.
Right. So basically, the ball lies in the court of the foreign officers of both the countries. Akhilesh, your last thoughts before we wind up the show?
Oh, no. What I am getting from my sources in Government of India in different agencies, that there is a sense of unease in Pakistani establishment about the way India is responding on the borders. They did not imagine that such kind of response will come from India, and it is creating sort of frustration in the Pakistani establishment that they cannot go beyond this. They cannot fire more than this.
Right.
If they fire more than this, it will become a war-like situation. So this is a major problem that is coming in the Pakistani establishment, and now they are coming personal on the diplomats who are the easy pie.
Right.
Diplomats are always easy pie, and you can catch them anywhere and you can just misbehave with them. So diplomats are just becoming victim of frustration that is prevailing in Pakistan, according to my sources.
And of course, as Mr. Raghavan said, it's also a result of the bad political relations which are existing. But remember, it goes without saying that the safety and the security of the diplomatic missions need to be assured as laid out in the Vienna Convention. Hostilities between India and Pakistan anyways would not end up benefiting either of the nations. De-escalating the tension and somehow getting back to the drawing board and sit across for talk would be something which perhaps both nations would now be looking for. I thank all my guests, Mr. G. Parthasarathy, Mr. Raghavan, Mr. Akhilesh Suman, and also a big thanks to Mr. Naqvi, who joined us on the program from Karachi. Goodbye and thanks for watching.